there is only one thing you need to learn and understand about Magna Carta 1215, it's this. Magna Carta 1215 is the sole peaceful means known to humankind by which the rights of the weakest, most innocent citizens can prevail over a massive, potentially corrupt and oppressive state power. This is the voice of freedom, Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. Welcome to your next lesson with hosts Fitzroy and Carl.
Folks, good evening, good evening. Sorry, I just realised I coughed into your ear roll and that was probably not very nice of me. I do apologise. The last couple of nights, once again, very sorry, haven't been around. I have been cook as 10 Scottish sailors after a bad Thai feed. And I had the Thai feed. Very, very, very lovely meal, I thought at the time, but turned out it had repercussions that have extended for a couple of days. So I won't go into the nitty-gritty about it, but thank you to everybody who gave me some suggestions on how to thicken up the issues that I was facing. Okay, all right. Well, tonight, we did have a few different things planned tonight, but there has been a lot happening in Brisbane in the last couple of days, particularly surrounding medical profession or medical professionals who are trying to protect we the people. Dr. William Bay had his hearing yesterday in Ann Street in Brisbane, the hearing he wasn't allowed to attend. AHPRA, the medical registration organisation, refused to let him attend his own hearing and only let his solicitor attend via video link. And then they invited him in at about 2:30 to have a chat. One suspects to hear the result, but when they discovered that there were quite a few hundred people there with him and quite a number of them were streaming live, they decided not to let him in the building or any of them and to withhold their decision. Now, I haven't heard today whether or not they've actually let that out. There is a meeting tonight in Brisbane where up to 10, I think, doctors will be taking questions from the public. That's happening in Warner at a church hall in Warner. I did want to be there for that tonight too, and did actually ask for permission to stream from there. As it turns out, I probably just wouldn't have been well enough to go and do it anyway. So apologies to those folks who I did talk to who are setting that up. That's done through AMPS, AMPS, Australian Medical Professional Society. And you can find out more about them through Red Union, which we will have a talk about at some stage. So the big question that it's all raised in my mind is how can we help? How can we protect ourselves? How can we maybe help the medical professionals regain some power from these faceless, almost nameless bastards on the AHPRA board that are telling the doctors, ostensibly blackmailing them into following along with whatever rule they say happens. So obviously on this program, we talk a lot of common law and we follow Magna Carta 1215 pretty closely. And I thought, well, tonight, let's see, in theory, what we might be able to do. And that means we get the man himself in again. I don't know, Fitz, you must be getting a bit of a swelled head. I'm going to need a double-sized brown paper bag to take you out in public now. You've been on twice in 1 week.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how to respond to that. So
it's all good.
I'm actually
respond with a laugh. You're doing all right. Yeah, no, all good. So, all right, Fitz, I want to say good day to everybody who's tuned in tonight to have a look. Clearly, your Magna Carta Telegram channel is going great guns. So, hello and welcome to everyone from there, and of course everybody who's watching on one of 4 channels. What am I streaming on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm on 5, including Facebook tonight. There are 3, I think, YouTube channels. The main one to be watching is Nun2K, N-U-N-N-2K, folks. I think everything in the chat comes up through there. So if you're going to put in chat messages, that's probably the best one to be in so that I see it and can say something about it. Fitz, you and I have been discussing Magna Carta 1215 and whether or not there is anything that we, the people, can do to try and force AHPRA either out of existence, wouldn't that be absolutely magnificent, or at least protect ourselves going forward? And you have something of a solution for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a universal solution because everything comes down to law. And so it's just about using the law. So it's really straightforward. Yet, obviously, we're going to need to go into how it's done piece by piece, just to give people a real basic layman's understanding of how they can eradicate whatever the actual issue is. It can all go, especially if we start acting in concert. And so tonight we're going to go through the actual process of how we make those people who are hiding behind these legal frameworks accountable in their private capacity as a living being of nature with a conscience. That's
absolutely.
What we're going to go through.
I'll just acknowledge Peter Ackers in Townsville tonight. I owe Peter a phone call if he's the right Peter that I'm thinking he is. If not, there is another Peter in Townsville who I owe a phone call to. This will be something very interesting for everybody in Townsville at the moment who is encouraging me to come to Townsville. Follow along with this closely. And of course, Fitz, we are looking at doing something further south than Townsville, actually down in New South Wales a little later on, or next month. And this will be of particular interest to them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is, if people can really understand this, this is like going to cover pretty much any problem you have, especially if you work together as a community. It'll really have like serious weight. So this is going to be a pretty, I'm actually really excited about what we're going to do tonight, to be honest, because it's going to have a lot of weight behind it if people can understand it and then act on it.
So there are a few things to understand before we kick off about it. Not everybody can do this process. There are certain things you have to complete before you can go into this process, yeah?
Yeah, so obviously there's some qualifications for it. One is that you cannot have a criminal record. And when I say criminal, I don't mean offences as far as like legislative breaches. I mean actually have harmed somebody. It doesn't work so good if you've got a criminal record for the last 10 years. You generally need to be 18 and over. And obviously willing to actually, abide by the law the best of your ability. And so we're going to cover what that actually means. So you need to have the intention to want to stand under law, not legal, not legislation, but actual law, which is the law of the entire Commonwealth, which is that pretty much no loss, harm, keep the peace, and commit no fraud, And so when you act on legislation, you're actually doing those things. You're actually committing loss and harm. So there needs to be a real understanding that if you follow legislation, you're actually acting against the law.
Absolutely. Thanks for Peter clarifying. I might have the wrong Peter. Yes, I might, because the Peter I'm thinking of has a different name. But sometimes in chat, you never know. So Peter Ackers, be prepared. We are coming to Townsville. All right, so we'll kick it off, Fitz. I guess we start with the oath.
Yeah, absolutely. So we might bring that up if you've got that available.
I do indeed. So now, is that big enough? Can everybody see that?
If you could go a bit bigger, probably a bit more helpful. I'm not sure if you can enlarge it. You might have to hit enable editing. There's a little, it's a little white.
Yes, I see that.
And then that should allow you to get that up a bit high. You should be able to stretch it out.
There you are. Is that any better?
I've just got a black screen right now.
Not helpful. Let me remove. Let me stop the screen. Let me share the screen again, and we'll have another crack. Oath to self.
Looks like something's coming up. Okay, there we go.
All good.
So
you can see that okay?
Yep, now I can read that now. So before it was a bit too small for me to read, but yeah. So obviously, as you can see on the top, it's got the little Article 61 banner. It's just, pretty simple. You put in your name and address. Now, this one is one you would send to yourself. So you have two options. There's one, I didn't want both of them because it would just confuse people, but hopefully there'll be a way that you can access either this one or the other. So the oath to self, it says exactly the same thing. So the contents is exactly the same. It's just that you don't address it to a baron, you address it to yourself. So it's this. All this really is a statement of intention to stand under the law. That's the most important thing. You just need to have verifiable evidence that you intend to stand under the law, which is Article 61, because that's the highest law. That's the law that restores our innate capacity to self-govern. That is what we need to follow, and there's a process, and you first need to make a statement of intention that you wish to do that before you can do anything else, right? And when you take this oath, that breaks all the criminal systems, all their assumed and presumed contracts they have with you. And so you don't have to worry about how you phrase things, whether it's in what their version of legal is. You don't have to stress about that, right? Because we're breaking that contract, because we are saying we are living men and women who have protection under the agreement we created with government that started way back in 1215, and it hasn't been changed since. And you need to prove that it has. And if you can't, you are committing crimes. And this just requires the bulk of the people get behind it, and this will be a reality. So, this is a wonderful way to initiate that process by getting behind Dr. James Bay, which we'll discuss how that works later. But basically, this is just a statement of intent. Did you want to read it, Carl, just so people can see what it is?
So I'll read it as if it's me then. I, Carl Liebold, in full knowledge of treason being committed in Parliament by delivering the sovereign peoples of this common law land into the hands of foreign powers, in understanding of some wrongs done by the present holder of the office of sovereign, from whom I now transfer my allegiance according to the law of this land. I do so willingly and wholeheartedly enter into lawful dissent, and I solemnly swear upon my oath to obey the direction of the Lords of the Barons Committee, whom invoked Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta on the 23rd of March 2001, in accordance with the royal command to do so, as long as said barons act strictly according to constitutional law at all times, without deviation, until such times as redress of these present wrongs has been achieved. Sworn and subscribed on the date, signed, and then witnessed by 3 people.
Yeah, so your witnesses cannot be a family member or someone who shares the same last name as you. They obviously can't be someone with a criminal record. Now, I'll explain what criminal meant a moment ago. And they generally need to be, some say 21. I'm going to say 18 because that's the way we define adults in this country. But there are, in some instances, where I've heard 21. They need 21 and older. So just going back up a little bit where it said office holder of sovereign, if you don't understand what that means, it just means the actual head of state. And we only have one in the entire Commonwealth, and that's the monarch, right? And we don't actually have one because they were deposed in 2001. And so if there's no monarch, because the structure was the highest form of government way back in 1215 was the monarch. And so everything that happened after that parliament was a creation of, that the monarch allowed to happen. So if there's no monarch in place, there can't be any parliament. And so we don't actually have a parliament because there's no monarch in place. It's just the people don't know it. And all you're doing is you're actually stressing that point. Now, could you imagine if millions and millions of people started actually doing this, then that becomes a reality, right? But it needs to be initiated. Before others will join, someone needs to initiate it, right? So whoever's here tonight, you can be here on the ground up, and start it off. And there's a really good cause behind this because this is about our health, right? So everyone, if you've got relatives that are in hospital or in some kind of care facility, you know what I mean? And you're being obviously given all these restrictions as to how you can visit them, this would hopefully be a really good motivator for you to actually start actioning this so you can make that all go away. And the more of us that do it, the quicker this happens.
Absolutely. Yep. So this, in conjunction with Dr. William Bay, what he's obviously stood for and has now woken, at least in small part of the medical fraternity, and then has awoken a great deal of support around himself, obviously, to keep pushing that message. It's taken time, but thankfully somebody is actually doing it. What we're doing tonight is actually targeting the nameless, faceless bureaucrats, if you like, and they're not nameless. We've got their names. but they are faceless to most of us, and they don't have any medical training for the most part. A lot of legal training, but not a lot of medical. So what we're going to do tonight, hopefully, will put AHPRA on notice. And those of you willing to be abiding by this and to do this, we might nearly be able to have an action.
Just want to jump in if I can, Carl, just because I just forgot a couple of things. You
Sure.
can see there's a date on there, so the date at the top. You can make any date you want. I would just do it the same date that you have it signed and witnessed, but the day you sign it and have it witnessed, those dates all need to be the same. So sorry to cut off, but I just needed to make sure that I got that out as well. So
Yep.
Carry on, my friend.
No, that's all good. No worries at all. So yes, taking the oath is the first step, but there are many other steps to follow. So Fitz, let's move on. There are a few
So
questions.
that's your first. That's the first thing you need to do. That needs to be mailed off. If it's an oath to yourself, you obviously put your address, and it has to be in recorded post or registered post, as we call it. Something that's got a tracking number that can be proved that it's been delivered, even though it gets delivered to you. It's still proof of delivery, right? So you need to be able to have that statement that's proven, and so that's why we do registered post. And so as soon as you send it, you don't have to wait for it to come back to you. As soon as you send it, you have a receipt. There'll be a tear off section on the back of the envelope if it's a registered post one, and you'll also get the printed receipt from the post office, and that is your evidence that you have now made that statement official. And so those receipts that you have, you start photocopying them and your original oath. So you don't send your original oath, you send a photocopy of your wedding signature oath. So you keep your original oath and you start making copies of that oath because you're going to need it in all the other notices you're going to be sending. And you make a bulk of them. And then you make a bulk of copies of the receipt as well, because those receipts, you need to send copies of the receipt with a copy of the oath that will go with your notice. I hope that wasn't too much.
Martha is asking, why do we need to send it to us again?
Well, you don't. You can send it to a baron if you like, but this is just a way to make it happen really quickly, and it's more cost effective. But the reason you're sending it is anything sent in mail is now deemed an official document. So that's why you need to mail it off. It might seem fruitless, but there's got to be evidence. And the only way to get evidence is the postal receipt, because the receipt, the actual post office is like a court in its own, because it has a timestamp and a date on it. And that's like an official process now.
Okay, a lot of other interesting information coming through in the chat. Thanks, Matt. I wasn't aware that I was aware that the CDC had changed their position, but that's for another story, another night. All right, let's move on. From the oath of allegiance, we step to what?
We're going to go into a cover letter, because if you're doing a conditional acceptance, because this is the way you want to do it, right? Because what's happening is we can't actually send a notice in William Bay's name. We need to send it in our own, right? So then we need to have a reason why we're sending that. And so what we're doing is we're conditionally accepting that AHPRA has the authority to make demands on the care providers that we rely on for our own health to be in order, right? Because so the decisions that AHPRA is making is affecting the quality of care we can access, right? Because they're putting terms and conditions on it. So we are sending a conditional acceptance that says, yes, we're willing to accept that you have authority on proof that you have the authority, and you need to provide that. And so that's what this cover letter I've drafted specifically for this. Now, you and I were discussing off air, this doesn't just need to go to AHPRA. You can actually send it to any health minister, any Department of Health, the secretary. There's a bunch of people who are all associated with this. They can all get it. So you don't have to just stop at AHPRA. Like this particular cover letter will be specific to them as well. So it'll cover a fair few different so-called government departments and their ministers.
So would you like me to read that?
Yeah, I reckon people might like to. It's only one page, so it's one of the shorter ones I've done, so you should be happy about that.
Okay. Dear whoever it may concern, please find enclosed a notice of a conditional acceptance requiring you, name the person, to prove you have the authority to make demands on the medical health practitioners. I, by name, rely upon for medical treatment. Your demands place restrictions and conditions that are cited as justification by medical health practitioners to deny life-saving medical treatment if not complied with. Therefore, in your order, for I, Carl Leopold, a living constitutional subject of the English Commonwealth realm, standing under law since the invocation of Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta, to lawfully comply with your demands, you have 10 days to produce evidence in substance that Article 61, the highest law in effect across the entire British Commonwealth realm, of which Australia is part, is no longer in effect. Please be advised that the 1571 Treason Act was assented to by a constitutional monarch, meaning that it is still in effect across the entire British Commonwealth realm, which a jury of the people is oath-bound to uphold should you fail to produce evidence that you have lawful authority to demand conditions on how we, the people, can access our inalienable constitutionally protected right to medical treatment. And see the attached notice.
Yeah, so that
Recorded
section
post
says
is-
recorded post. I don't know how it got down there. That should be up the top. So I'm going to have to make an adjustment to that before it goes out.
Roger that.
That was meant to be up the top. So I don't know how that got there. Sorry, guys. I'll have to fix that. But yeah, that's a really basic one. You can use that for other anything to do with, anyone who's making demands in the medical field.
So
it's
just in
universal.
this medical field. So that means, Fitz, we could send this to the federal health minister, all
Correct.
state health ministers,
Correct.
all state and federal chief health officers, which are just the
Correct.
bureaucrats.
Yep, absolutely. And the departments, the heads of the departments as well.
That's right. You could
That's
send
all good.
this to the head of your local hospital.
Yep,
Because they all have a board.
correct. Yep.
Yep. And
Yeah,
a
well,
manager.
they will usually have a CEO of the hospital.
Yeah. So you could send it to the CEO of your hospital, of every hospital. Doesn't have to be yours.
Correct.
So this could have somewhat of an effect if a large amount of people all of a sudden start.
Yeah.
Well, look at the effect it had for the Aussie Cossack when we started sending postcards to him. Just imagine what sort of effect this can have if we start sending these notices to the right people.
Well, you're standing under law, right? So it's an entirely different outcome here,
Yeah.
And that shifts the consciousness of those who are, still running the fraud, that they have some kind of authority, right? Because as soon as the numbers start showing up, they're going to start panicking, guys. It's all a weight of numbers. That's all it is. That's the only thing that shifts anything is the numbers coming together in a unified way.
Yeah.
And you're just doing it with proof because you're standing under the law, and they cannot deny it. It's not possible because the law is truth. It's just as simple as that. They can't deny truth. You can try and destroy the people who speak the truth, but you can't actually destroy the truth.
Ain't that the truth?
Did you think on that one for a while?
I've had that for years. I've just seemed the right opportunity to drop it.
Oh, I set that up beautifully for you. How about that?
You did. Thank you so much. All right. So from this letter, then we go to where?
Oh, so then we're going to go to the actual conditional acceptance. But what I did want to say is that let's say if you had some kind of medical, procedure in tow, and then you had like some letter from the hospital or whatever saying that these are the conditions under which you can access, their service. Well, you can use that piece of paper and make a photocopy of it and attach it to the cover letter. So that's another way you could do it, right? So it could be something specific to you as well. So there's multiple ways that this could be used because then you're giving them evidence of what it is that they're demanding, and you're saying, okay, well, I accept that you have the authority to make these demands, but you first need to prove that you have it. Until you do, you're committing crimes.
Yep, absolutely. All right, then the notice of conditional acceptance.
Yep.
Okay.
So we have done this in a previous one, so we don't need to go too much into it. We can just go lightly through it because we have done it.
There is quite a few pages of it.
Yeah,
and
so
I've read it once. Go back, find the
Yeah,
other one.
yeah. So I just want to, maybe we'll just read a page and a half of it, something,
Yep.
and that's it, because we've already gone over this, guys. You can find it. I'm not sure if it's lesson 10, possibly, that I think we did this
I think
one.
it's lesson 10. Yep.
Yeah. So,
Okay, this is the notice of conditional acceptance. Notice to agent is notice to principal is notice to agent. Dear recipient's name, please be aware that this is a notice, a lawful instrument that requires your urgent attention. This notice of conditional acceptance may be used as evidence in my defence. Whereas I, Carl Liebold, stand entirely under the tenets of conditional law in lawful dissent as to my duty under the law, and that it is to my understanding entirely unlawful to comply with your demands at this time, and since the 23rd of March 2001, and that I have withdrawn any and all presumed allegiance to the office of sovereign, the Crown, including business and government departments, due to my individual duties under the law. See Exhibit G, Oath of Allegiance to the Committee of the Barons. Those duties being stated within Article 61 of Magna Carta 1215. Please see Exhibit C, Article 61 of Magna Carta 1215 text, invoked by the Royal Proclamation according to the correct protocols of English and Commonwealth law on the 23rd day of March 2001. See Exhibit B, Letters between the Barons Committee and the Office of Sovereign. Therefore, the law forbids me to comply with your demands. Take note, I, Carl Liebold, have taken the time to thoroughly research the Treasonous Commonwealth of Australia Act 1901 to the best of my knowledge, and of the understanding that this act is null and void, because 1, there is only one Commonwealth, and that's the Commonwealth of Great Britain. Commonwealth of Australia is a corporation with that number attached, registered to the US Securities Exchange Commission pursuant to the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. There was no constitutional monarch in place to grant assent to the colonies to have their own constitutions, because the Bill of Rights of 1688-89 was an act of high treason by way of usurping authority from the office of sovereign and granting sovereignty to Parliament, as evidenced by the clause that states that the pretended power of suspending the laws or the execution of laws by regal authority without consent of Parliament is illegal. 3. The 1688-89 Bill of Rights created the belief that the head of state, the monarch, is merely a figurehead because Parliament is sovereign, hence Parliament's self-declared right to parliamentary immunity, which by definition is high treason. 4. The 1688-89 Bill of Rights is the reason why there is no provision for the constitutionally enshrined mechanism for self-governance through trial by jury in our public court buildings. Trial by jury is the people's safeguard mechanism that puts people in charge of government and its institutions, we the people created to act in the service of we the people. The Commonwealth of Australia Constitution is an act of Parliament, and Parliament does not have the power to write itself into constitutional authority because Parliament is created through a constitution. Holding a referendum to vote on an act of treason is institutionalised war crime. There is no security clause in the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution that protects the supremacy of the people over government, should government attempt to enslave the people. 7. The minutes of evidence before Select Committee of the House of Lords given by the Reverend Samuel Hines in 1838 on the expediency of regulating the settlement of British subjects clearly stipulates the premeditated intention of establishing the colonial model as profit-making centres through local councils, parishes, districts, trusts, and erecting of local courts with judges. See Exhibit F.
So just have a quick pause if you like, Carl. That evidence is specific to Australia. There's a lot more, but that is pretty much the core of what's really required, because that's really bad, what's already there. I mean, that's shocking. If you really understand what's written there, you guys would be aghast if you truly understood the power and the magnitude of how badly people have been lied to from the get-go about what they thought was a country that was built on fairness. This was all one massive mind trick to make sure that this country turns into what it is right now. And I don't even know if I'd call it a country, to be honest. So those 7 points are really big, guys. I'm not sure if you guys really appreciate the actual power of what's written there, but that's some serious war crimes that's been written in there. And so it has a lot of weight. So people are asking, how does this work? It works when the people get behind it and they actually follow it through. So if you just think, oh, I just want a victory for me, then you don't understand what you're doing. This is not about just for you, right? This is about for everybody, and you do your bit. And it won't work unless everyone does their bit. And we are
and when everybody does their bit, then you'll get your bit. That's how it works. But until everybody else does their bit, nobody gets any bit.
Correct.
Except the shit bit that we've currently got.
That's what we have now. So if you want something different, guys, it requires you to work in concert, right? In unison, and stand behind the law, stand behind the evidence, right? That is the tip of the sword. The evidence is the tip of the sword. You guys need to create the force to drive it in. That's what's necessary. It won't happen any other way. So I hope you guys understand what that actually means, right? The evidence is the sword, the tip of it. You guys are the force that drives it through the heart. And it slices this corruption down the center. And then we all get what we want. I didn't want to go too much further into that. There's just a section where it needs to be signed, just like the oath does, where there's 3 witnesses. The same situation, right? You don't have any family members. Someone over 21, definitely 18. I reckon you can get away with in this country because that's how we do things here. And no criminal record for the last 10 years. Not, distinguish the criminal from, legislative breaches. And so you can. With the oath, you need wedding signatures, so you need people who are, live witnessing that you're signing it. With this one, if you cannot find people, in the moment, if you don't have anyone to sign it for you, you can do what the PP system is. So it's just writing the letters P.P. and just make sure you've got permission from 3 different people to sign in their name. So you would just put your signature next to their name and then date it. So that's a last ditch effort, right? So better get something out than nothing. Because if we wait for other people, if you don't have people that, are switched on and are willing to do this for you, and you stand in and witness for you, then this is another option. You just need to get some permission because not everyone has access to people in their local community. Sometimes, they have friends or people they know that are somewhere else. So you just get their permission, make sure that they're okay with it, and then you just write their name in. Because the contract's on the government agents, not on us. So it's more about the evidence than how perfect we are, because we, the jury, of the jury are the ones who are going to be judging them for their crimes, not how perfect we were in the letters that we sent. So don't stress too much about it. But ideally, you do want to have wedding signatures because in their current system, they find that more powerful. Yeah. When they see wedding signatures. So that's your first, go for that one if you, exhaust all stops and get that one done if you can.
All right, to the flow chart.
Yep. So this is just step 1, guys. Right? There's multiple notices that get sent after this. So if you have a look, you have 2 columns. You have on the left side, which is no demands. The right side is demands. And so the conditional acceptance is if there's some kind of demand made on you, right? So we're using the AHPRA situation right now. There's a demand being made on you indirectly by the actions they're taking by squeezing all the medical health professionals, right? That puts a demand on you. That says there's certain restrictions placed on how you can access your care, right? So you need to violate your own dignity and integrity in order to try and, keep your dignity and integrity as far as your medical health goes, right? Could you imagine? Like the contradiction right there. So that's the right-hand column there that says conditional acceptance. But as you can see, you send an oath with either, whether it's lawful objection or conditional acceptance. And then 10 days later, minimum, no sooner, the next notice in the process is, I've just shortened it because I couldn't finish it, couldn't fit it in. It's the notice of default and opportunity to cure. So what that is like a very gentlemanly way, because we're using a legal format to send lawful notices because they understand that. They understand that format. So it needs to be done in a way they can recognize. And so in the legal system, they do the same. They have conditional acceptance, then they give you an opportunity, And then if you miss your opportunity, then it's a default judgment. So that second one is saying something to the effect of, you know, look, you might have misplaced the first one. I'm giving you another chance to do something about it, you know, as a gentleman would. Here's your opportunity to cure the situation, right? That's what that is. So these first three, what we're doing is we're shoring up our defense that you know, we are sending evidence that we are standing on the law and they are not. So this is a defense for us. So that's what those first three are. Because notice the default is like, well, now you've had two opportunities, you've wasted them. Now everything that's been sent to you now stands as statements of fact, right? That's how the legal system works. So we're just saying, well, you didn't rebut it. You sent nothing back. There's no evidence supplied that none of this is true. So now this is a default judgment against you that this all stands as truth in law. So now once you've done that, then the next one, which is number 4, is saying, so the legal system doesn't have this, right? This is all constitutional now. It's saying that you have done nothing to prove that you have any evidence, that you have any authority, but yet you are still persisting in pressing forward with your demands. Now, in order for me to access my medical care, I'm being coerced to commit high treason. So why it's called high treason is to do anything that violates your integrity. That's an act of high treason. So you are sending them now that they are liable. So now we move from defense, 1, 2, 3 are your defense, where 4 and 5 are what we call offense, right? You're going into attack. And what they're saying is now you are liable for the crime of high treason because you have persisted after being shown the law and you have persisted to ignore it. So now this is a serious crime that you're liable for, right? These are the ones they don't like getting these. And these are 10 days apart, guys, minimum, no sooner than 10 days. And then the last one is a notice to stop. And in that one, it says, look, I have the power to arrest you myself. So if you are going to send these notices, guys, I highly recommend you read them first, because if you don't read them, you won't understand anything about it. So before you send anything, guys, you need to read what you've sent so you can understand what you're doing. So not doing it like a robot, understand it. All right? That's very, very important, because if you're truly sovereign, you understand what you do. If you're just a robot, then you don't. So you need to actually start reading these, guys. It's critical. And then you can see over here on the other side of the flow chart, you've got action from recipient and action from you. So after you send your first one off, if you get no reply, then you just send your next notice. But if you get a reply, if they for some reason do it, it's very rare they do, then there's rebuttals that we can issue you with, right? So because in their system, you need to rebut anything that they put forward, because they've got the power to actually enforce it with criminal force, right? They actually have those people who will do that. So if you stay silent with anything they send you back, then you have now given your tacit agreement to anything they write to you. So we always rebut. They don't, because they've got the power of force, so they don't care, right? Because who's going to make them do anything? Until we, the people, come together in big enough numbers, and then that's when we'll have the power of force. But up until that point, you rebut everything. So it's the same system all the way down, guys. So on your third one, don't get a reply, just send your next notice. If you do, you send it with a rebuttal with your next notice, and so forth down the chain. And if you get to the end and you get a rebuttal, you start the whole process. So if they send you something after your fifth one, you start the whole process again with a rebuttal instead of a conditional acceptance. So that's pretty much how this goes on. Now, if you're doing it alone, obviously you're going to be going, oh, well, what's this going to matter? It actually has a lot of power, guys. You'd be very surprised. However, when they start getting more and more happening, that's when they start panicking, guys. So you won't actually know it until you actually do it. That's the only thing that's missing, is the actual experience. So this requires a level of courage too, guys, to actually step into this space and follow through. And then you'll be able to see it. So if we think about how many people sent postcards to Aussie Cossack, if we had that level of organization doing this, I'm really confident you would see some pretty big names starting to panic and resign.
I think you're right. I think you're very right. Absolutely. People are asking where they're going to be able to download these things. At the moment, folks, the website's not up and running yet. Jaden's working his bits off, I believe, hopefully soon. So all the documents that I've shown tonight are available. Just email me at voiceoffreedomhq@gmail.com. I'll attach them and send them back to you. It's going to be a lot of attaching over the next 24 hours, but we'll see how we go. Voiceoffreedomhq@gmail.com, and I'll just attach everything and send the documents back. They are a template. They're in Word or in PDF, and you'll be able to fill them in as you see fit. All right, Fitz, on to our next slide, the groundwork.
Yeah, so this is really, really important, right? Because what needs to be understood here is there's 3 corporations that are going to come after you. So when you send off any conditional acceptance, you want to do this in concert. You want to put the courts, councils, and cops, your locals, on notice, as well as the actual head of the courts of your state. So there will be a CEO of the magistrates court there, as well as the chief of police in the state as well, not just the most senior officer at the local station, but also the chief of police. And this is the lawful objection notice. So the courts and the council, they get lawful objection to Crown agent, where the cops get lawful objection to police. And why it's called the groundwork is because they're the 3 that work in unison and in concert, these 3, and at least 2 of them gang up to come after you, whether it's the courts and the council or the cops and the council, all 3, right? They'll always work in concert at the local level. These are the ones who will make stuff happen to you, right? So you need to actually shore up the back door, so to speak, so they can't come in, behind you. So if you have, let's say if you're challenging like a speeding fine, or I don't know, let's say your energy bills, right? At some point, they're going to start using one of these 3 to come after you, at least the courts and the cops for sure. So you want to make sure you're putting them on notice and letting them know of your actual lawful standing, and that they're going to be committing high crimes of treason if they do anything against you, right? So you're sort of setting the groundwork as your protective net, so to speak. That's why this is critical. So anytime you send off any notice, these 3 corporations, they need to be put on notice at the same time. And you only do it once with these guys. It's still all the same 5, but you're coming off that other column, which is that left-hand side that said no demands, unless you have an issue with courts. Let's say you have a summons or something like that, then your version of putting them on notice will still be a notice of conditional acceptance. If you want to challenge council rates, for example, or any sort of demands they're making on you to destroy something that's on your property, for example, you would send conditional acceptance as your first initiating notice. Same thing if there was some action that the police instigated against you, your first notice would be conditional acceptance as well. You would just have some paperwork attached to whatever that was that you would make a photocopy of, and you'd send it in with the cover letter. Now, the cover letter that is there tonight, that's not specific to those situations. There is a generic one that you can use that's in the Telegram group that I've started. And I have seen people saying, I can't access Telegram. So I'm just thinking what another way that could happen if there was some kind of link.
When the web page is up, we'll be able to put all of that stuff up there. I'm sorry it's taking so long. Jaden must have got a really crook batch of Thai if he's been down for a couple of weeks. So
it's working right out. So just wanted to make sure that's what groundwork means, right? You are making sure that you're getting the base work done to protect yourself from any potential action that would come against you. And so the difference between if it's a lawful objection to Crown agent is if you don't have anything to challenge, right? So if you don't have anything to challenge from the courts or the council, then you're doing a lawful objection to Crown agents. You're just letting them know of your lawful standing. Same with the police. It's only if there's some action that they have taken against you that would change to a conditional acceptance as your initial starting point.
Right.
And so the same system goes, with what we discussed, what goes with a conditional acceptance. Your oath would always be attached at the end of either a lawful objection as well as a conditional acceptance, regardless. And so it's a copy of the oath, not the original oath. You never, ever send off any originals. It's always copies. And when you create the notice in hard copy, you would keep a copy of it for yourself, but not the entire notice, just up to the witnessing page, because that's all you need. Because the rest of it you can print off anytime, because it's always the same information, just for your own records. And then you would staple the receipt, because obviously we're putting it, all these notices are going to get put into an envelope that's like a recorded or a registered post envelope. So the receipt you would staple to your copy, so prove that it's been sent.
Sure.
So I'm hoping I've covered that pretty thoroughly.
There's a lot of talk in the chat room, a lot of people wanting me to talk about LNPA, David Cole, and what's going on in the Northern Territory. I have a little bit to say about that, but Fitz, before I would say anything on that, I would ask that you, because you and I have discussed at great length the benefits of Magna Carta 1215 to our original nation's people, if they actually understood the power of it. Now, LNPA, for those people who are not up to speed with it, David Cole is a member of OSTF. He's one of a group who've started that organisation in Northern Territory. He has put out a very emotive video about child stealing in the last few days. And for what it's worth, I believe every word that's come out of his mouth. I don't know LNPA from anything. Never met, never spoken to the man, and look forward to one day maybe meeting him. I don't have a lot of time for OSTF, and anybody who tweets or screams or says great things about OSTF should understand that they are basing just about everything they're promising in the UN. And if it's got the UN involved with it, then we're not going forwards, we're going backwards. So that would be my statement on OSTF and LNPA at this personal stage, or this particular stage. But Fitz, what we're talking about here works for our First Nations people in such a powerful way. If only they understood, became like we all need to become educated on this, they, amongst all of us, get the greatest power of all.
Absolutely. Because the biggest and most extreme transgression was the whole colonization and everything that happened from that point onwards. And if the 1215 Magna Carta was adhered to, this country never would have been colonized by the Brits, because they would have been committing crimes and the people would never allow it. They would never allow harm to come to others, because the 4 tenets of common law is create no loss, do no harm, right? That's the first 2. Keep the peace. There was no peace happening when that happened, when they came and colonized this place, and commit no fraud. And the whole thing was one massive fraud. So, the thing with the law is there's no statute of limitations on the crime. You can go back as far as you need to rectify what the actual crimes were that were committed against you. And so, some of the most heinous crimes have been committed to the local population who were here before white settlement. And so all they need to do is use the actual law of the land of the entire Commonwealth, even though, they weren't part of the British Empire originally. That's just how we are now. And they have a law in place that's no different to traditional tribal law. And that is that there's a trial by jury, just, they call it something else. But it's a jury of the peers that get to decide the fate of those who have transgressed against us. Now, whether they've got names and titles, it doesn't matter. They're still people with a conscience. I know a lot of people think that they don't, but they still do. And they just chose to sidestep their conscience, and they'll be judged in a conscience tribunal, people judging from their conscience of what the rectifying action needs to be in order to, make everyone whole who has been transgressed again. So that you think about the level of compensation and what can be done with that, to try and actually establish some kind of level of dignity and base level standard of quality of life that has been missing for hundreds of years. That can all be put into that, right? And it can be done in a way where there's councils come together and they actually, use their own conscience, not ego, of how they're going to distribute that, right? So we're changing the whole way in which we interact with one another. Like there's a real lifting of the quality of everyone's life when we act out of conscience, right? Every decision's made from there. It's I should get more because I deserve this. That doesn't exist. It's how can we lift the entire quality of everybody's life, no matter what the transgression. Because if we don't lift the quality of everyone's life, we're going to have transgressions continue on. It's just that, it's really that basic. Yeah.
And Steve Johnson, you've got a big mouth. You're going off well in chat. You've managed to poke your head up in front of me. That's not necessarily a good thing. You want to know about what about that poor children being raped? Her mum protected her and hid her. Steve, there have been absolutely abhorrent acts happening in our First Nations communities, and they are happening now, right now, this minute, in First Nations communities in this country, and they've been happening forever. To jump up and down and ask me what are we going to do about it, to ask Fitz what we're going to do about it, to ask Bosie or demand Bosie to do something about it. We all want to do something about it, all right? But it starts with the people in those communities, all right? Now, you're saying there's a mother there that protected her child and hid her as best she could. I hear those stories all day, every day from people of both, well, all colours, black, white, red, yellow, all sorts of colours. Doesn't matter the colour, the stories are the same. Children are being taken, children are being raped, and adults have to turn a blind eye for that to happen. So until that changes, particularly in our Indigenous communities, until the people rise up and stand up against those that are committing these atrocities, then what can happen? What can we do? Because I'm not there to stop them. If I was, trust me, it'd be stopped.
I'd like to suggest to Steve that you start learning about the true law, Steve, because once you do, those things will start shifting really fast. Because the reason why there's so much violation in those communities is because they're severely traumatized. And the only way they can heal is first to have other people, wanting to stand under the same law that they want to stand in, and that is of our dignity and integrity, which comes from our conscience. And that's what the 1215 Magna Carta is about. It's just all about preserving our dignity and integrity. And so you cannot heal until you start actually looking at that part. So if you really want to help, Steve, this is where you can take the power into your own hands instead of asking others what they can do, right? You know the old saying, what's the one that JFK said? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Well, here's your chance, my friend.
That's right.
Stand behind your words.
Act. People in those communities know who are committing these atrocities. It has to be stopped, and we have to support those people that stop them. Colour doesn't come into it, not 1 ounce, not 1 iota. This is what's happening to our kids.
We're all part of it. We're all one big family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any pain that happens to any other individual being with a soul is pain to all of us. So it doesn't matter. We've all got our part to play in this, right? If we stand under the law is the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Yes, absolutely it will. But you have to be willing to admit the truth and then share it. A lot of people have trouble admitting the truth these days because, let's face it, a lot of the truth is pretty hard to believe. But
just do you want to jump in? Natalie Ann says, I'll help with a database for contacts and documents.
Natalie Ann is just one of the most wonderful human beings in the world, and I have been leading her up the garden path now for 2 weeks that we're going to catch up. So, yes, Natalie Ann, we will catch up. In fact, I will undertake to talk with you in the next 24 hours, and we will set it up properly. I'm not sure if you're back from your little sojourn. She's got a very cute little dog for a
Did you see the comment? I'm a bloody legend. You're pretty funny too.
Yeah, she's a legend. And so too is Tasha Marie, who is floating around in the chat tonight. I lovingly refer to Tasha Marie as my Joan of Arc. So God forbid anybody who wants to go in there and take her on. So generally tonight then, Fitz, let's just recap. People have been given the knowledge to go and the tools to deliver notices, to take the oath, to deliver notices on behalf of themselves to any medical professional in the country. But further than that,
the bureaucracy that actually, the bureaucracy that runs it, they're the ones that really need to be hit in the guts. So they're the ones that are fully committing the top end of the crimes. Not saying that it makes the medical professionals, clear, they don't get away with it either. Yet it's been driven, so you go to the head of the snake where it's been driven because everything precipitates down from there. And so everyone has the power to make this change, guys, because you are just standing behind the truth. The law and the truth are the same thing, not legislation. That's not law. Law is that which we agree to live under. And that is no loss, no harm, keeping the peace, and commit no fraud. That's all we're doing, and we're asserting it. And so this is your shield and your sword to pick up peacefully, because this is all about doing things peacefully, right? You don't want to give them any reason to come at you. So this is all peaceful. I'll never come at you if you're peaceful, and especially asserting the law. They cannot, because they then would be committing crimes in open daylight, and they can't have themselves to be seen doing that.
Should we mention the name competition?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Why not?
So we have a knight. Our logo has been constructed based around the knight, and of course the Magna Carta 1215. The roses and the vines mean something too. Fitz explained all this to us the other night, but we're looking for a name. So if you have a name, voiceoffreedomhq@gmail.com. Put in the subject line knight's name or something like that so it stands out. And we'll hopefully come up with a name in the next week or two. And we'll see what we can do. Steve Johnson, I did talk about Lumpa. I don't know what you were listening to at the time, but I've said everything I've got to say about him. It's about my entire extent on the knowledge. It seems that you have lost everyone in your family for 4 years now. So you're obviously suffering a trauma from what you've gone through, Stephen. Very sorry about that. You stuck out because you were being fairly rude to people in the chat. That's why I poked up. So be politer and we'll make friends. More interesting questions from Paul Orchard wants to know, his post office is run by a franchisee, Fitz. Will that still work?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
I think
if you're really worried about it, what you can do is you can actually do the traditional way of sending a letter, and that is, the stamp that you pay for, the $1.10 one. I'm not sure. I think that's what they cost now. And then you can just put in a standard envelope. Well, these ones will probably need an A4 one, just because they're so thick. And then you just ask them to put a registered post sticker on top of it, and then make sure that they stamp, the actual rubber stamp they have. They stamp over the stamp you've stuck on. That's really important. And then it'll go by what's called Royal Mail. So it won't be the corporate mail. So if you're really worried...
Sorry, finished?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't mean to cut you off. Had a question from Auslander Info. At step 5, would it have more weight if we sent a cover letter and copies of those documents to the Governor General of Australia as well?
Oh yeah, don't if you want to go that far, absolutely. See, we're at this stage now, right, where we can shut this down real fast, but it just requires us to work in concert. But yeah, Governor General for sure. I mean, we all know what that's about. Don't be shy. If you've got the capacity, guys, go for it. Absolutely. That's a brilliant suggestion. So yeah, for sure.
Make up another one for the Governor General then. That's the way that should be working.
Yeah. So guys, if you actually need help, you can just get in touch with Carl, and I'm more than happy to set up some cover letters for your specific, whoever you want to send it to, right? That's the level of effort and support you'll get. It just requires you to have the courage to initiate this, right? We'll be there for you, promise, because that's what we require, right? We need to work together, and if we work alone, it doesn't have the power. So we work together. We are the power. That's all this requires. It's just to be unified. And so anyone who's got the courage to step up and take the action, I'll tell you now, I'll be there to support you. That's what I do all day in, day out.
Be a knight of Terra Australis.
How good is that one?
Has a ring to it, doesn't it?
Does it? Yeah.
Jessica, big effort. Right up on the top of the list.
Yeah,
there
that's gone right to the top of the ladder, hasn't it?
I think absolutely. Knights of Terra Australis. I love that. Okay, having a little bit of a glance down to see if there's much more. No, there's not. So Fitz, there are a few questions about Bosie. I don't know if you want to hang around for those or not.
What I did want, actually, if you go in the private chat, Carl, I've put up a link to John Locke's YouTube channel. And so he's gone out of his way to make really, really in-depth resource videos to understand this notice process. He covers all 5 of them, and he gives a really clear explanation of it. So, guys, if Carl puts that link up if you can see it, Carl.
I've just posted it now.
Perfect, guys. So if you see the Nun2K icon, that's the link to John Locke's, I think it's called Locked On, YouTube channel. And it's brilliant, guys. There's so much quality knowledge there. If you're really trying to catch up quickly, this will help you. So I can't recommend it highly enough. And I apologize to you, John. I've been wanting to do this for weeks, and I get so caught up in the content that I keep forgetting. So I'm so pleased I got to do that tonight.
Good.
But yeah, if you want to do some BOSI conversation, I'm more than happy to leave it here.
All right, mate. Lovely to see you. We'll talk again next week, Monday night,
All right,
7:30.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, so there has been a few questions, including Bosie, and Bosie, where's Bosie? August lockdowns and more news about Bosie. I haven't spoken to Ricardo, and to be honest, I don't expect to speak to Ricardo until Ricardo wants to speak to me. That's generally how this whole thing works. I have sent them an email recently with a couple of questions, but I do not think that, and there was no urgency about that getting back to me about it. So look, I know that they're engaged in other things at the moment. I know that in the next little while, he will be making a number of reasonably large announcements, which I think will shock quite a few people. I would urge people to watch what's going on at the moment around ScoMo and other things, particularly in the background of the previous government and now the existing one. I think we're all seeing some weirdness that's going on there. So yes, that's about all the news that I have on Bosie. On August lockdowns, look, yes, we did talk about August lockdowns, and that was pretty much everything that all the noise we were hearing through chatter and all that sort of stuff was saying something big in August. I've never been a big subscriber of lockdowns. I think they will be very difficult to institute again without some kind of mass panic or mass health problem. And monkeypox, I don't think, is just not going to do it. More people start laughing than get worried about it. And in countries like here in Australia, it is not rife, and we all understand what it really is. It's really just the chickenpox come back at you in adults after being excited by the spicy dart, as it's been referred to by Fitz. So, yeah, I don't see that lockdowns are going to be a long-term thing. Dates in August, I would suspect, might have some weight to them, would be tomorrow, the 18th of the 8th. I think at 8:18 on the 18th of the 8th, you might find that there are some interesting announcements or interesting things get released. But I have no proof of anything like that. So, and you've got to remember the timeline, international datelines change. I have a theory on this. This is a personal theory, and that is that if at 8:18 on the 18th of the 8th, 2022, there is an announcement that is going to affect the globe, then New Zealand and Australia will hear about it first. If we don't hear about any such announcement until our Friday, which will be the 18th in America, and then there are all sorts of things happening there, then it's more going to be something that's related to the American side of things rather than to us globally. There has been a very interesting development come out about Nasara Jassara. Those people who follow 107 would be familiar that he's been put, up online suggesting that Nasara Jassara is never going to happen, and that it was actually a plan of the deep state. So there is some other corroborating voices behind that in the audio that I've heard, at least. Not all of it's 107. But those folks who follow the likes of Simon Parkes or Charlie Ward might be in for quite a shock when they read those further comments. I'm open-minded about the whole thing. I don't know enough about Nasara Jassara or the blockchain technology to really make any kind of a comment. So my advice to you would be get a hold of Cass Smith, who we spoke to a little while ago, and take her advice. Get to all your cash out of super and put it into gold and silver or other precious metals, at least an asset that you control. So yeah, there's been some interesting things thrown up about Nasara Jassara, and certainly if you want to go and do the maths on it, given current day, it doesn't really add up. But then again, there's going to be a lot of things that don't really add up. So once again, I'm going to sit on the fence there until we see a little bit more about the detail. I think that's the big thing. Look, Auslander has put up an anniversary for Tasha Marie yesterday. Does that mean Tasha Marie and the most marvelous man who plugs things in and does a magnificent job with doing such plugging? Can I tell you? Because I own a great deal of stuff he put together that plugs together. Did you have your 25th anniversary yesterday? I didn't know about that. Happy anniversary. Hope you and the man had a lovely, lovely day, if that is the case. I would tell you how I spent my day, but it was nowhere near as pleasant as I suspect or hope yours was. After suffering my, oh God, you got no idea how unlucky I am. Thai food. I love Thai food. Haven't had it in an age, and there is a Thai food place not far from me. My daughter went to the pizza shop next door. She said, "Oh, you sure you don't want to have pizza, Dad?" No, I'll go and have Thai. Well, I'll be going back to the pizza shop. That's all I can tell you. Anyway, folks, I hope you've learned a little bit tonight. This Magna Carta 1215 lesson being aimed specifically for health professionals and those people that want to act on it. If you would like more details and you want access to these letters, because the website isn't up yet, I'll have to just email them to you. So please email me at voiceoffreedomhq@gmail.com, and I probably don't ask questions or anything. I'm just going to attach something and send it back. And there are, I think, 4 or 5 files in there. I will also attach, or at least give you a link to download, that should work, a video that Fitz has produced on how to fill in these documents again. So there is one of those available if you really need it, but you could always just go back and look back through here. Julian Assange, I see, has been mentioned there. Adam's brought him up. I need to have another chat with WikiChick because she's been floating around all over the countryside recently, and I haven't been able to sort of nail her down to say, tell me what's going on in the world. Everything has been very quiet regarding Julian Assange. Most people of one persuasion believe that he's still locked in a cell in Belmarsh prison awaiting extradition to America. Others are saying he's already in America but not locked up in a cell, and that he might be sitting somewhere much more secure but in much finer surroundings. So we're going to wait and see what happens with that. I have a feeling that there will be news on Assange in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So I've even heard it. Look, and I'll tell it here only because it's just so outrageous that if it comes off, I'm going to look amazing. I have heard that the first time people will see Julian Assange in public is when he pops up in Sydney. That's all I've heard. He's going to pop up in Sydney. I didn't get when, but he's going to pop up in Sydney. Ah, there you go. Now somebody's beat me to it. 31st of August on Assange. Is that the date he's going to pop up in Sydney? I don't know. Look, I hate giving dates because nothing ever comes true, and it's the easiest way to make us all look like fools. So there. As for lockdowns, I know nothing. I'm not seeing any evidence of it, particularly where I live. But who knows? What's going to happen overnight? Isn't it a joy to wake up every day and find out what the next piece of bullshit scaremongering storytelling they're giving us, or waking up hopefully to find that there is some bloody good news for a change. At any rate. All right, I think I've spoken enough tonight. Free Assange is definitely the way to go. Mad Aussie, the Voice of Freedom website is vofhq.com, but at the moment, it only has a landing page there where you can donate and see where I've been with tours. Oh, well, I guess we can talk about where we're going. So there's some things going on in Townsville. There's a chance we'll be going to Cairns. Heading further south, 3rd of September, I hope to be down on the Central Coast doing a forging course. We're going to heat up some metal and beat the crap out of it, maybe come up with a sword. All right, I might be over-exaggerating a bit. I might be able to come up with a bit of a knife or something, but we'll give that a go. And then down to Singleton, where we're going to the Cali. Going to be a big week at the Cali. And then we're going to go into Sydney for the Aussie Cossacks hearing, which will be on the 13th of September. And with a bit of luck, he'll get out of prison that day. I think if he did get out of prison that day, he will be banned from speaking to any and all social media types. He will not be allowed to put anything up himself, I would imagine. That'll just give him good time to nail down the finalisation of the book deal that he's doing. I think he's self-publishing, actually, and getting a book tour together. I'm sure he is going to be doing something like that. You might also have heard that he plans on starting his own channel. Wow. There's a story behind that. One day we'll get to talking about that, I guess. We'll wait and see what happens if and when he gets out. Thank you to everybody who is giving us some support here, and everybody who wants a T-shirt. Now, if you want a T-shirt with our Magna Carta logo on it there, I can certainly help you out. All you need to do is email me, same email address, voiceoffreedomhq@gmail.com, with the size of shirt that you require. We also have some Voice of Freedom shirts that are going up like that one. And then there's that logo too, which we've also got floating around if you want it. So if you have a preference for logo, by all means, but that one or the white version of that looks quite good too. So they are going to be available. In fact, some of these are available right now. If you want a Voice of Freedom shirt, email me and I can, as long as you want it in extra large, double extra large, or triple extra large, I can sort you out. Hopefully by the end of this week or early next week, I'll have sizes in small to large and I'll be able to send those too. And same deal for that as yet unnamed night. But I don't mind Knights of Terror Australis. That sort of gives us all a bit of a name, doesn't it? Very good. Very, very good indeed. All right, folks. Love your work. Thank you for joining us again tonight. And tomorrow night, not really sure what we'll be doing tomorrow night. I'm a bit shaky on my feet still after that dodgy, well, I nearly said dodgy Vindaloo, but it was Thai, so it wasn't a Vindaloo. But yeah, it made a hell of a mess. At any rate, thank you very much for your support. If you feel the urge to keep us on the road, then every dollar is another half a litre of fuel. And we would love to be able to put it in the car and come and see you and see that and do that soon. Please go to VoFHQ.com, and if you feel the urge to donate, then great. If you don't, that's great too. We'll see you when we come to town.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!